Hello and welcome back to the Charity Shop Chat podcast with Charlotte Greenwood. Unfortunately, Mimi couldn't be here today, but I'm joined by two very special guests. As always, this podcast is powered by the Charity Retail Consultancy, supporting charities with expert retail guidance, strategy and training to help maximise income and impact. And don't forget Charity Retail Learning in conjunction with the CRA, with almost 50 online modules designed specifically for charity retailers. Now, I don't know about our listeners, but charity retail feels slightly relentless at the moment, and I think everyone in the sector is feeling it. Rising costs, change in customer habits, volunteer recruitment challenges, and somehow everyone's still expected to keep the shop floor running perfectly every day. And I think one thing we hear all the time from people working in charity retail is that there is barely time to stop and think, which is why spaces where people can actually step back, learn from each other, and have a proper conversation about the future of the sector matter more than ever. And that brings us nicely onto today's episode because we are talking all things Charity Retail Association Conference, one of the biggest events in the charity retail calendar, and honestly one of the few times that the sector comes together in one place. And whether you work on the shop floor, in e-commerce, volunteering or leadership, it's become such an important opportunity to hear new ideas, challenge thinking and connect with people who genuinely understand the realities of charity retail. So joining us today are two people right at the heart of making all of that happen, Julia Edwards and Anna Pashley from the Charity Retail Association. We're going to be chatting about what's happening in the sector right now, the conversations charities are really having behind the scenes, what themes are shaping this year's conference, and why investing in learning and people matters more than ever. Please welcome Julia and Anna from the CRA. Hi
Hello.
guys.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
So, for starters, could you just let everyone know kind of what you do for the CRA?
Hi, everybody. My name's Julia. I'm the head of outreach at the CRA. So conference is one of my big remits. I also lead on volunteering and I work on the CRL partnership really closely with the Charity Retail Consultancy. So it's great to be here.
Thanks, Julia. Anna, what about you?
Hello, I'm Anna. I'm Corporate Partnerships Manager at the CRA. So I have the honour of working with lots of different service providers who have products or services that they want to share with our charity retail members and to create connections where they can do that. One of which will be the absolutely enormous exhibition at this year's conference.
Excellent, good stuff. So let's get into it then. So, what are you guys finding are the conversations that are dominating charity retail at the moment?
So I think for me, you can't ignore the impact that the war in Iran is having on charity retail. It's affecting all aspects of our members' business, whether it's what's happening with goods that are not able to be sold on the shop floor, whether it's the impact on fuel prices or concerns around access to things like new goods that might be coming across from other parts of the world. It really is infiltrating all parts of their business at a time when economics were already tight. So I think everyone's kind of thinking, is there a way that they can try and squeeze things a little bit further, or they can delay maybe purchasing things for a little bit? So, it's probably keeping people awake a little bit.
It is a big challenge, isn't it? All those budgets are just getting tighter and tighter.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think talking to some charities today, I think I was on the hospice steering group for the Midlands, and they were talking about how they feel like their income keeps increasing, but it just offsets the costs that are going up. So actually the contribution back to the charity kind of is remaining quite steady and level at the same rate.
Yeah, and people might have seen that the consumer price index went up last month. So, that's obviously having an impact on the number of people that are going out and spending. And certainly our research showed that, footfall was pretty low last month. I think it was 2.6% down. So, you're right. People are having to work really hard just to try and maintain that kind of status quo, which is really challenging when perhaps there aren't the shoppers quite in the numbers that we would like to see at this time of year.
So what themes kept coming up when you were starting to look at this year's conference programme?
Well, I mean, as you know, conference and the sector, it's all about the people. And that kind of came through really strongly from the conference planning group. We're really lucky that we had about 20 charity members who work with us to advise, what they're seeing on the ground, how they're kind of trying to mitigate against things, and the kind of successes, and how they want that to be reflected in the conference program. And when it comes down to it, everything is about the people. So whether it's about the kind of new consumers where secondhand is a first choice, whether it's about the kind of staffing issues that people might be seeing in their shops and kind of how they're dealing with vacancy rates and kind of retention not being as strong as it should be, whether it's around kind of modern volunteer recruitment, all of that boils down to people. And it's something we talk about all the time, that's the big difference between charity retail and commercial retail. It's all about the people. The people are at the heart of everything that we do and shape the whole experience. So hopefully you can see that in the kind of program that we've put together this year.
Absolutely. And I think, we can definitely take inspiration from what the commercial retailers are doing, but we do have to tailor that to what our cause is, what our shops stand for, and remember that we are a charity.
Yeah, and without the kind of volunteers there, being the lifeblood of our business, a lot of our shops would really struggle. So I think that we really need to lean into that, and we feel like we wanted that to be reflective in the theme for conference, this kind of community powered retail. It's not just about the staff, it's not just about the shoppers, it's about all people that have a touch point with the shops or with their e-commerce operation or some other aspect with how they kind of have a touch point with charity retail, and how we can kind of shape that and kind of reflect that in Newport this year.
Great. And in your opinions, are there any areas you think the sector still isn't talking about enough?
So I think there's a couple for me. I was chatting to our head of public affairs, Jonathan, the other day, and we were talking about the fact that our sector kind of carved out this space for itself around sustainability and reuse. And we did that really successfully when charity shops first opened. But if we don't work really hard to protect that space is at risk of being squeezed out. Every day there are commercial retailers offering take back schemes. There are recyclers that want to do more with the kind of end of goods stuff. There are waste companies that want to get into this space. So I think something that we want to see in kind of the next 12 or 18 months is, how are we making sure that we hold that space, and we try and grow that space if possible, and don't let it be eaten away or chipped away at by people that perhaps have got bigger budgets than us, or stronger brands, that we need to hold true to, what is unique about us, and this space that, we're the OGs in this space. We want to make sure that we keep in it.
Absolutely. And I always say that charity retail is two things, isn't it? It's shopping with a conscience. So the first one is the charity's cause, all of the funding that goes back to the charities to support that. And then the second thing is that sustainability, that role in the circular economy that charity shops hold is incredibly important. So yeah, definitely we should be talking about that more, and talking about the impact of it.
Yeah, I think sometimes we kind of take it for granted a little bit, that because a lot of our items are donated to us, that we feel like we're already doing a lot in that space, but there's so much more that we could be doing. So yeah, I really want to see that kind of expanded and talked about more within the membership.
There's also, thinking about the social value of it all, the charity shop's the only place on the high street that generates such a great amount of social value into those communities. So, we did a piece of research a few years ago now, and it was shown that charity shops up and down the country altogether are bringing over £75 billion of social value to those communities. And that is through that feeling of helping the planet, of having a space where you're welcomed, of having somewhere, the feeling of just getting a great bargain. And I think that's a real uniqueness to our sector that we need to be shouting about more.
Absolutely, it's a staggering number, isn't it? Yeah, then it got me thinking. I was like, I don't actually know if you added up all the charity shops, how much do we provide back to the charities? Do we have that number anywhere?
In terms of social value, I think you could slice it by the staff and volunteers, because the four cohorts that were interviewed were staff, volunteers, shoppers, and donators. So there probably is a stat there of staff wellbeing.
So moving back to the conference then, why do you think events like the conference matter in a sector where everyone is so busy firefighting day to day?
So I think, our delegates and our members tell us that it really matters because it gives them an opportunity to kind of pause and take stock of what's going on. For a lot of our members that are small and medium sized, they're perhaps the only person in their role. They don't have the luxury of having a huge team around them that they can bounce ideas off, that they can collaborate with. And so this is an opportunity to be in the room when loads of other people are actually doing the same job as you or working in the same part of the third sector as you. And I think there's something to be gained from hearing those stories that other members and outside consultants are sharing with our sector to kind of understand actually, yeah, we have power. We have power when we all come together as a sector. We can celebrate the amazing things that we've done, but there's so much learning that we can do from each other. And certainly in all the jobs I've had, I've never worked in a sector that is so open and willing to talk about their successes and their failures so willingly to what some might perceive to be their competitors with a very small
Mm.
c, because it's completely not like that in our sector. And for me, that's one of the things that I love, that you go into a session and it's a hospice or a national chain that is kind of talking about a lot of the successes and challenges that they're finding, and everyone else is thinking, wow, I can genuinely learn from this and take that back kind of in a strategic or operational way. So yeah, I think it's great.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, isn't it? There's when you work for a charity, you have to wear so many hats. You can't afford to guard your knowledge, because if you can get something from another charity that saves you time, and then you can reciprocate that, it just saves a lot of time that you just don't have, do you?
Mm. And that hat wearing thing is really overwhelming sometimes. The fact that if you're a head of retail or even an area manager, you might have an area manager, but you're also responsible for volunteer recruitment, or you're also trying to drive your e-commerce strategy at the same time. Um, and it's great that you go to conference and hang on, there's another person that's also wearing similar hats to you. And, there's that kind of camaraderie, I suppose, of kind of meeting other people that are in a similar position to you. But hopefully conference helps you to be energized. And one of the things everybody says when they come to conferences, it reminds us that we need to be really proud of the work that we do, and we need to remember to shout about it. So whether you go back and you become reinvigorated to kind of promote what your retail chain is doing, or whether you're invigorated to just talk about the whole sector and the amazing work that the whole sector does, I think that pause moment out of the kind of Monday to Sunday, even work that you do as a head of retail, or any role within charity retail, that pause moment allows you to realize, hang on a second, this sector really is amazing. And, you know, I have a role in championing and shouting about that. So hopefully people come away with that as well.
Yeah, and I think there's charity retail has got the longest job titles. You hear things like head of retail and marketing and finance and digital transformation. Oh, and the cafe that we've suddenly taken on from whoever had it before. And it goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah, sometimes
Um,
it is never ending. So, we see those people, and we have a space for those people. We want them to kind of feel like they can come and maybe just take a couple of those hats off for a day, maybe ideally 2 days, and take it all in.
and do you hear stories of ideas, partnerships, or changes that happen after the conference because of those conversations that they've had?
Yeah, so interestingly, separately, CRA have a special interest groups, and we have a property special interest group that's co-chaired by somebody at Mind and somebody at Oxfam, who are experts in the kind of estates and property field. And we were really lucky that they came and gave a presentation on kind of estate management at conference last year. And the queue of people to want to talk to them and get their contact details and meet up with them for coffee, or go and meet them at their office, was basically out the door. And when I spoke to them like 2 weeks ago, they were saying actually all of them, they went and they met with them, or they went to visit them and gave them some advice about their estates. And that doesn't happen just from having a telephone call. That happens because those people were in the room They loved the presentation, and the two speakers were generous enough to want to genuinely keep following up those conversations and continue sharing their knowledge and help them in any way they can. And I think a lot of the delegates from that particular session will have followed up and met these ladies for coffee, and hopefully that has had a big impact on, how they're negotiating their contract, or a clause that's come up that they're not quite sure what to do with, because both of these ladies have the luxury of being experts because they work for national charities, whereas for some of our members, they don't have a dedicated property support team. It's just another role within somebody else's job. So, yeah, that was a live example from 2 weeks ago. So,
Great, love that. And Anna, from kind of your corporate members' point of view, do you find that exhibitors that go to the conference are then able to really talk to the attendees about the challenges they're facing, and then they're able to kind of relook at their whatever service they're providing and try and answer some of those challenges?
Absolutely. The exhibition, it's always so lively and buzzing and full of people. You can see ideas sort of coming into fruition in real time. So we've got the biggest exhibition we've ever had this year, and that's including some of our long-standing corporate members that have been with us for 20 years, who come along to conference to be able to check in with their long-standing clients, people that are their friends, because after working with somebody for that length of time, of course, you're going to be pals as well. And to carry on doing that refining of what the services that they're offering that's keeping those different clients with them over such long periods. And then every year we have a new cohort of people coming into the sector, recognizing that actually charity retail is where it's going on. And these are the people they need to be talking to do that innovative stuff with, that testing, that piloting, that shaping of what is the new product and service that's going to really make an impact here. So, in the last couple of years, we've seen a surge in different organizations enhancing or supporting their products with new AI offers. That's proving really popular. But a big part of that is they're coming to conference at the start of that journey to have those conversations to work out what exactly that offer is. And we see then in the follow up, they start to have pilots, they start to have reference groups from the contacts they've made at conference. So people are designing the service for them in real time in that sort of collaborative space. So yeah, it's really exciting always to see what comes out the other side of the event.
Yeah, I think you've made a good point there. Those who are starting out on their journey, whether it's opening their very first charity shop or trying to scale up e-commerce, conference is a great place to be because it sets you up for success, doesn't it? It gives you the tips of how to start your journey. It tells you the pitfalls that you might face so that you can try and
Mhm.
mitigate it. And it just basically gives you a better start to going on that journey.
And it's organisations as well that are just breaking into the charity retail sector, and they're there to really just absorb what it is that people need, what will work, what is not worth their time, because we know that everyone's time poor and stretching that resource to as far as they can. So our exhibitors are there to just really take the pulse of what's going on in the sector.
And for someone who's never attended conference before, is it really for everyone? What kind of people attend? Is there genuinely something for everyone from shop floor teams all the way through to kind of directors or CEOs?
yeah, so it's a really varied list of job roles when I kind of go through the delegate list every year at conference. So, there are some kind of key stats. So, kind of 40 or 50% of people that come to conference on the delegate side are kind of a head of retail, or at a kind of head of department level, or they're at a kind of management level. So, they might be, the volunteer manager, for example. But then we're really lucky that about 17% are kind of C-suite or director level, so really the most senior people within the charity. Um, and then aside from those kind of big cohort groups, I mean, there is literally any and every role. Sometimes we have volunteers because they're so small, they're just starting out. We might have volunteer trustees that come along to find out and represent the charity. Lots of shop managers, area managers, and regional managers of course, but then also, a warehouse manager or the logistics coordinator or the retail marketing coordinator or the retail team lead, like the roles are endless, and we try to make sure that all of those roles are catered for at conference when we put the program together, that there's not just sessions for people, there's not just sessions that think strategically, that when you come there's something for everyone. And you can see that in this new networking zone that we've got, and we've got these networking slots. So we've got a networking slot specifically for shop managers. We've got a networking time slot specifically for heads of retail. We've got a networking slot for C-suite and director level people. So hopefully everybody can come and think, okay, this is content that really is honestly being kind of curated for my role. And then, they kind of book appropriately.
That's a really great addition because peer support is really important when you're in charity retail, just to be able to go to someone else. We've got this challenge at our charity. Are you finding the same thing, or is this just a problem in isolation for us? So, yeah, great.
Yeah. And, we know that sometimes conference can be really overwhelming. When you put 350, 400 people all in the same space at the same time, like there are loads of people you could potentially talk to. But, if you've come on your own or you're part of a really small team, we get that, it is quite a big deal. And so we wanted to try and incorporate more networking specifically into conference. So by having these kind of dedicated time slots, and then also just having a specific networking zone in the exhibition, we're hoping that, people might naturally gravitate there, if they're a kind of solo attendee, that, we want that experience to be collaborative, but we know not everybody just wants to go and start saying, hi, I'm Julia from the CRA, who are you? So trying to kind of give a little bit more structure to it. We hope, fingers crossed, it's the first year we'll be doing it. We'll kind of break down some of those barriers that people find, prevent them from making more contacts. Because, ideally you go to conference and you come away with a list of loads of people that you think, I really want to follow up with that person because I want to talk to them about the visual merchandising in their shops, or I really want to follow up with this person about the e-commerce strategy they're developing. And they kind of come up with a list of people that, in the coming weeks and months, they will make stronger connections with.
Yeah, I've definitely done that. I've come away with lists of people of like, oh, yes, I'll talk to them. So yeah, I completely agree. So without giving us the full brochure version, what are you personally most excited about this year for conference?
Okay, so for me, there's two sessions on the agenda that I think are for different reasons. I think I'm really looking forward to. So, first, people might have seen there's a fireside chat with the kind of senior team at Cancer Research UK. I think people probably haven't escaped the news that they announced in the autumn about quite a change in their retail chain and closing quite a lot of their shops. And I think that kind of naturally created a lot of anxiety within the sector and uncertainty within the rest of the membership. So we were really pleased when they actually approached us and said, we would really love to come and have a slot at conference. We want to be collaborative with the sector. We want to explain our rationale and the kind of new direction that we're going from a retail strategy perspective. So, we've been really lucky. Julie Byard, the director of trading there, has spoken at conference numerous times, and she's a fabulous speaker. So I think that's going to be a really fascinating session that will kind of open a lot of people's eyes as to why they've chosen to go into that direction. Hopefully, to put some people at ease, and for them to kind of be so generous with their time. I think the second session is that we've got a session on structural organization design, which is just so different for our sector. The conference planning group were coming up with ideas that we just haven't thought about before in this sector. And we're really lucky we've got a consultancy firm that specialise in this area that are going to come and deliver this content. But this is content, this is my 11th conference that I've organised at CRA. We've never had a session on this theme at conference before. And, for some people, it's not going to be at a level that they're ready to think about, but this is really top level strategic thinking on the structure of your business, how you organize your team, how you kind of think about organizational design in loads of different ways. And so for that reason, I'm just really intrigued to see how it lands this year, because perhaps for people that are kind of right at the cutting edge of charity retail strategy, I think this is going to be a really insightful session for them.
Yeah, that does sound interesting.
Anna, what do you think?
Well, of course, I'm going to say that the thing I'm most excited about is the exhibition this year. That's where I will be located, and my favourite bit is just seeing what all the different exhibitors bring to that space. They know that the conference it's a conference, but it's also a celebration of the sector. And as somebody that goes to a lot of retail related conferences, I can honestly say ours is the most colourful and full of excitement and, of course, fantastic outfits from their charity retailers. But our exhibitors really recognise that. And I've already heard that this year there's going to be some really interesting builds going on, there's going to be some good merch. And I think the inclusion of the networking zone is also going to really liven it up and see how people are using that space. It's something that I think we were asked for, so we've responded. So now I'm going to be keeping an eye on that to see what kind of networking and connections are happening in the exhibition as part of the conference, not just in those breakout periods. Um, Looking at the program, I'm really interested in resilience and resilient communities. And I think it's great to see that we're looking at what does personal resilience look like. We every day, we're seeing the news, we're hearing about different awful things going on around the world. That has an impact on us, especially if you're in a role where you're customer facing. So I think that we're looking at ways in which people can build their personal resilience is always really great, but also the sessions where we're really reflecting on our community and what is the community that we're operating in, and how do we reflect that in our shops and in our staff and in our volunteers. So I'll be trying to get across all of those because I think it's such an important thing more than ever to be thinking about who are the people that make up not just our operation, but in the wider context of who we're coming across every day in our shops.
Yeah, I like the one about resilience because I think there's quite a common misconception, particularly in our sector, that resilience is about taking on more and remaining
Mm,
silent if you're struggling. And I actually think resilience is much more about acknowledging the fact that you've got a hell of a lot on your plate and being able
yeah.
to say, okay, this is what I've got going on. This is the kind of support I need, and then just cracking on with it. So I think that will probably be a good session to listen to. The program balances practical retail learning with leadership and inspiration. Was that intentional, and is that important, do you think?
So I think that we're in a sector where our members don't necessarily get opportunities to go to lots of conferences or experience lots of external learning and development. That they might be lucky to have something internal or a system or program that they can engage with, but external things that they can go to tend to be more limited. And conference is one of the key dates in the diary for people. So I think conference then has to work hard to kind of cover dual purposes. That not only do we have a responsibility to the individual to upskill them personally, and whether that's through sessions like the resilience session that Anna's mentioned, or the fact we've now got two menopause sessions on the program this year, which I mean, 5 years ago we just wouldn't have been having that conversation. So something that is personal to the individual. But also, we know that delegates are there representing their charities and they need to think about it from a strategic perspective or from an operational perspective. So, hopefully, in the program, you can see that we're trying to cover both of those side of things. And then it's up to the individual to think, actually, yeah, the vast majority of people in our sector are women. So menopause is going to affect all of them, or you're going to be line managing women, or you're a woman that's going to be line managing other women. So whether you want to go to the menopause in you session, which is the kind of individual session about what you might be experiencing, how you can kind of cope, and the strategies you might want to employ, or whether you're interested in going to the menopause session from a strategic perspective, and how does your business adopt a menopause policy, or how do you kind of build your workload and your staff team around changes that might be occurring to women of a certain age. um, Even in that, that's a great example of where we're trying to offer the personalized angle for the
Mm.
individual, but also we're doing a kind of dovetailing with a session that's more strategic that then anybody can go to.
Love that. I think that is really important, isn't it? Because it's a conversation that is starting, thankfully, to be talked about a little bit more about the individual impact that menopause has, but how do you support those going through it as a line manager? That is really important. So this is probably going to be my fifth or sixth year going to the conference, and my first year going with the consultancy. For those who have been for several years, and they're looking at their budgets and thinking, "Oh, I'm not sure we can afford it." Why do you think you should keep coming back to the conference year on year? What's going to be new in the program, and what's, if I'm a delegate going for the sixth year, am I going to go round the exhibition again? What's the new exhibitors and suppliers that are going to be there that would attract someone like me?
Um, I think that's a great question, Charlotte. My answer would be that I think charity members can't afford to not send their staff. There is so much data around the kind of ROI and engagement of staff as to why they really need to be having opportunities like this. So there was some research in 2024 that showed that organizations who prioritize learning and development are more likely to have better fundraising programs, of which retail was one of them, and they're going to have happier staff. So, there was another piece of research that 70% of employees are more likely to stay with their employer if they are offered structured benefits and career development opportunities. And that was some third sector research. And I definitely consider conference to be a career development opportunity. So, my kind of counterpoint would be for some of the charities that are sitting on the fence thinking, yeah, we've sent our head of retail for 3 or 4 years in a row. Um, Maybe we can kind of pause this year. Is I would say actually, when you look at the kind of evidence and data, there's so much that says, to kind of keep your staff engaged and interested and, kind of reduce absenteeism and stuff, you need to be offering them learning and development opportunities. And this is kind of the date in the calendar with which you can do that.
So I've been managing exhibitions since 2022, and I can say that no two exhibitions are the same at the CRA conference. We constantly have new organisations that have never exhibited before join us. So I think this year, as I said, it's our biggest exhibition yet. About 20% of those are new faces on the scene with new offers that they've realised actually charity retailers need to know about this. So that could be things like expanding on what the new goods offer is and how that can benefit your existing setup and how you can integrate that into your space. Obviously, technology is booming, so many different offers around how they can integrate AI in various different aspects of the organization. We've got, of course, our familiar faces, but they're not standing still. They're coming because they're showcasing their new aspects of what they can provide to existing clients. And if new ones want to come on board too, I'm sure they'd be very happy to talk to them.
It would be remiss of me not to say that conference is at a new venue this year, and that always changes the dynamic. We had 4 fantastic years at Harrogate Convention Centre, but we felt it was time to breathe a bit of new life into conference and move to a different space. So we're going to be at ICC Wales in Newport. It'll be our first year. So that always changes the dynamic of conference. So I think for people that maybe have experienced conference at Harrogate, I would say to them, come along to a new venue and see what that does to change conference. We've also listened to the feedback, and there's now more focus sessions than ever. So we've talked a lot about, the importance of learning and development, the importance of having strategy and operational things on the program. And this year you get to go to 6 focus sessions when normally you only get to go to 4. So you're kind of getting even more value from your conference tickets. So I think for people that are regulars, hopefully they'll think, yeah, I really want to see how conference feels and performs in a new space. And the fact they're going to get more opportunities for learning and development hopefully will be what kind of seals the deal for them.
Looking forward to the new venue and seeing what it's like. But the exhibition is definitely one of my favourite parts of conference. I think the suppliers that I've introduced to charities, or in my own or those that I work for through the consultancy, a lot of them is because we've talked to them at conference. We've, really understood the service that they provide. We've talked to charities who've used them and recommend them and speak highly of them. So that's a great place to kind of get all of that information, a bit like Toys R Us, all under one roof, in one big go. I'm looking for I don't know, a recycling merchant, and you just go and hit all the stands, and you've got all the information within kind of half an hour. So yeah, a really great place to attend.
Something else to consider is a lot of our exhibitors come to conference with unique offers for conference delegates. So when you're walking around the exhibition, as you said, Charlotte, you might come across some sort of deal that you would not get anywhere else because they just put it on for those conference delegates. So it's definitely worth, as you said, going around and talking to everyone and yeah, seeing what they've brought to entice you.
And if you've never been before, make sure you bring a big bag to take all those notebooks and pens and travel cups and all the other things that suppliers seem to offer on stands. But the charity retail consultancy, I think, wins with their fans that they had at Harrogate one year when it was really, really hot outside and everyone was boiling, and we had the lovely paper fans. Okay. So, do smaller charities sometimes assume that kind of big events like this aren't for them because they're so small?
I mean, I hope not. We try really hard to engage with our smaller members. We have a bursary scheme at conference. So, if you've got 5 shops or less, then you can come along to conference and apply for a reduced rate ticket. So, we want it to feel like, this isn't just something that's open for nationals or larger chains. And certainly CRA membership more broadly, the vast majority of our members have got less than 10 shops. So whilst lots of nationals are the ones that you perhaps think about first and foremost, actually the lifeblood of charity retail are the hyper local charities that are running 6 or 7 shops within their county or for the particular cause that they're really passionate about. And there are specific sessions on the program that you'll see are for them. So there's a session, I think the title is something like How Small Retail Chains Thrive. So, we know that, they don't necessarily have the huge marketing budget. They don't necessarily have access to a huge central team, but their successes are really important. And so we have carved out dedicated space for our smallest members as well.
Okay, so we're going to move on to our quick fire round now. So I'm going to ask some questions and I want you to give me kind of the first thing that comes into your mind. Do you want to decide now kind of who answers first if it's a quick fire round?
Julia.
Okay. I'd go first because I'm putting in my answers so that if I don't think of
Right,
anything
yeah.
else.
Well, no, then I can go, I agree with Julia. So it's fine.
Fine, fine.
Strategy, I love that. Okay, so first question then. One charity retail buzzword that you're hearing too much.
Oh, it's got to be conscious shopping. Everybody, whether it's influencers or, the sector we're talking about, we should be shopping more consciously and thinking about our purchases and not just kind of impulse buying. So, yeah, conscious shopping, I can't seem to escape that one.
I agree with Julia.
Oh
Uh,
God.
yeah, I think, you know, I, I go to a lot of retail conferences and I hear a lot of non-charity retailers up on the stage talking about their sustainability journey. And I think, as Julia said earlier, we're the OGs. So I think we need to really take the reins of how we're talking about it and how we're framing it.
One session topic every charity retailer should care about right now.
It's got to be the creative solution session. It's a repeat of a session that we did last year that was super popular, and everybody basically goes up and does their elevator pitch for one thing they're doing that's really innovating or moving the needle. And for about 6 months, every member I spoke to said that was the session I took the most away from, that I made the most notes in, that I went and talked to colleagues about the most. So we're doing a kind of 1 year on, repeat to see maybe how some people are faring and hear from some new voices.
I would say the networking zone in the exhibition. We've created that uh, upon request. There's nothing worse, is there, than walking somewhere, not knowing who you need to talk to, having to go through some sort of icebreaker just to work out if you're in the right group. We've done it for you. You can go walk into that space and know that everyone else there has got a similar understanding of the sector and they are the person that you should be networking with.
Biggest trend do you think we'll see more of over the next year?
It's got to be superstores for me. Everybody is talking about opening a superstore, wanting to open a superstore, not being able to find a suitable location to put their superstore in. And I think that, given CRUK's announcement and their plans, I think it's going to be a trend that's only going to continue.
I think I'd said before, we've never had more tech organisations coming to exhibition this year. I think it's just expanding at an unprecedented rate. Everyone's looking at how best they can integrate new systems to take pressure off, to make things pop online, to create new avenues for them to make sales. So I just think that's going to continue exponentially.
I agree. I don't think, yeah, AI is going away. So I think now everyone's going to be thinking, right, how can we use AI ethically? Because, some charities have got some really strong stances on their kind of the cause and the values that they have. And how AI kind of plays into that is going to be very, very interesting.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
One thing first time delegates should definitely do.
I mean, try and come away with 5 new contacts, like that's the beauty of conference. There's so many people you can meet. I don't think business cards are a thing. That's kind of very 1990s, and maybe you do that in the networking zone. But, if I give people one piece of advice, it's like if you're coming for the first time, be prepared to want to kind of exchange contact details with people because that's how you're going to get the most out of your experience. I mean, I love a business card, but I'm conscious that some people will think, "What the heck is that?" That's so yeah, that's so old fashioned.
I would say if it's your first time, especially if you're coming on your own, make sure that you are booked in to go to the gala dinner on the first night. It is so much fun. We have a fantastic drinks reception in the exhibition before the dinner. You get to relax, you get to mingle, you get to celebrate the sector, and you'll be on a table with your sector colleagues, all of whom are so friendly and fun. It's the best night ever. So make sure that you're signing up.
So I think that was a great conversation, and I think hopefully people listening will understand what the conference is about, and if they've never attended before, they've got some reasons now why they should try and get that cost through. And if you have attended before, then the new things that are coming up. But I think what always stands out after these conversations is just how much charity retail is evolving. It's not just about running shops anymore. Charity retailers are now navigating e-commerce growth, AI tools, changing customer expectations, sustainability conversations. The list literally goes on and on and on. And I think that's why continuous learning matters so much because nobody can realistically stay on top of all of that alone. And the charities that tend to thrive are usually the ones building learning cultures. They're encouraging curiosity, supporting managers, investing in teams, and staying open to new ideas instead of just sticking with how things have always been done. And honestly, one of the best things about the sector is how willing people are to share ideas and support each other, which we mentioned before. And we will be there at the conference on the Charity Retail Consultancy stand. So please do come and say hello because we genuinely love meeting listeners of the podcast in real life. And Kat from the consultancy and I are also delivering 2 focus sessions around visual merchandising and equity, diversity and inclusion with lots of practical takeaways for delegates. So whether people want strategy chats, practical retail ideas, professional sector conversations, or just to connect with other people who get charity retail, definitely come and find us and hear particularly about charity retail learning, which you can get for as little as £265 for access to almost 50 training modules. So it's time for our charity shop shout outs. So, Julia, Anna, who would you like to give a shout out to? Any charity shops doing amazing things, thrifting influencers, suppliers that you'd like to mention?
Yeah. So I went to an area manager meeting recently over in Hull, and it was actually in the upstairs of the market, which is a charity shop in Dove House Hospice. So yeah, of course, went and had a browse and bought more than I should have done in the shop afterwards. It's a really unique space. You know, there was loads of toys, and I've got two young kids. There was a craft section, and it's got that kind of really industrial vibe, and they've really lent into the kind of sustainability credentials. So I think that's one of my favourite shops in the last few months.
So I'm based up north. I'm in Sheffield, and there's one charity shop that every time I go to, when I leave, I feel cooler than when I went in. It's the St Luke's outlet at the bottom of the moor, if anyone's familiar with Sheffield. It's had a rebrand a few years ago. It's all about sustainability. The interior is absolutely beautiful. It's got a big student following. And every time I go in there, I end up spending far more money than I should. And my ever expanding wardrobe has a little cry and says, please, we can't simply fit any more clothes in here. But I'll go again. I'll probably go tomorrow because it's just excellent.
I think that's an occupational hazard, isn't it? Because we have to go and visit charity shops, we just end up buying more stuff.
I'm really good at the buying bit. I need to work on the donating bit.
Agreed.
I could be doubling my social value, but yet
Yeah,
here we
I
are.
know. It's just finding the time to just go through it all. I just keep just stuffing it back in, and I'm like, "No, that's a future me problem. I will sort that drawer out eventually."
Mm.
So thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. We hope we've encouraged lots of people to join us at the conference this year. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please follow the podcast, leave us a review, and share it with someone who loves charity shops just as much as we do. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. On Instagram, it's at Charity Shop Chat, and on the rest of the channels, it's at the Charity Retail Consultancy. And make sure you're following the CRA as well. Where can we find you guys on socials?
Mm. So you can follow the Charity Retail Association on Instagram at the handle We Love Charity Shops. On Facebook, we are Charity Retail Association. On LinkedIn, we are Charity Retail Association. You can see a theme occurring here. We are also individually. I'm Anna Pashley on LinkedIn. Julia is Julia Edwards on LinkedIn. So you can follow us and see what we're up to and out and about.
Good stuff. Well, that is all from us today. But as always, charity shops are full of stories that deserve to be told, and we love sharing them with you. So until our next episode, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.